Good evening and welcome to our regular scheduled Kingsburg City Council meeting for Wednesday, May 4th, 2022. The council chambers are open to the public at 100% capacity. Tonight, our invocation is going to be given by Pastor Tim Boynton of the Covenant Church, followed immediately by the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, let's pray. So, Heavenly Father, thank you so much for a beautiful day in a beautiful week in a beautiful season. Lord, thank you for all the good gifts you've given to us here in Kingsburg. We thank you for our neighbors, for our friends, for our churches, for the places where we work. And Lord, we thank you also for these leaders. We lift them up to you. We pray that you would give them wisdom and guidance. And Lord, would you also give them peace as they lead us well. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated. I will call our 6 p.m. regular session meeting to order. Madam Clerk, can you please do roll call?
Councilmember Hurtado?
Here.
Councilmember Crisell Jr.?
Here.
Councilmember Palomar?
Here.
Mayor Nord?
Here. Thank you. Item number 2 is to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, for presentations tonight, we have none. Item number 4 is public comment. This is a time for any citizen to come forward and address the City Council on any issue within its jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda. A maximum of 5 minutes is allowed for each speaker, and if you would like to comment on, make a public comment, just a reminder that according to the Brown Act, we are not allowed to reply, and also state your name and whether you are a resident of Kingsburg. Do we have anyone in chambers that would like to make public comment tonight? Come on up to the microphone.
I'm June Hess, 2181 14th. Several years ago, there were 2 men who came to our town from Sacramento. When they came into my store, I asked them what they were doing. They said, "We're doing a study on your town, a partisan study." And I said, "Oh, what party?" And they said, "Democrat." And I said, "Well, what are you trying to find out?" "We're trying to find out why Kingsburg is the shining star in the state." And then I said, "Well, what do you plan to do with this information?" "Well, we want to see how we can spread this out to other towns, and all the good things don't happen in just one town." And I got to thinking, what is it about Kingsburg that makes us a shining star in the state? And I'm thinking, well, let's see, we're pro-America, we're pro-God, we're pro-family, we're pro-life, we're pro-Constitution. We have a cute town, we have a wonderful city council, we have wonderful schools, we have a wonderful police department, and I was thinking of all of these things. And then we are the envy of other towns in the valley because we have a theme that other people envy. And we have now become a destination town. But we have a little problem. We don't have, being a Swedish-themed town, we don't have a Swedish restaurant or a Swedish bakery. And every day, without fail, somebody asks me where our Swedish bakery or Swedish restaurant is. And then I look across the street from my store and I see offices, offices, offices. Mostly offices that do not have walk-in business, and they are do their work online or on the phone. And there are restaurants or there are retail businesses that would love to come to Kingsburg, but they want to be on Draper Street. And my suggestion is that, and I hate the word mandate because I've heard it for 2 years, and I don't like the word moratorium either, but Is there some kind of incentive for the building owners to encourage them to let restaurants and retail come into those buildings instead of offices? And is there another place where these offices could be located? Because they park on Draper Street because they like to do that. And so that takes up parking spaces from our customers as well. So I just want to ask the City Council to consider making space for the businesses that would really benefit our town. And every day, like I said, without fail, people ask where they can get Swedish meatballs, for one thing. And we do have a place that serves Swedish pancakes, but their hours are limited. So we need help. Thanks.
Thank you, June. Do we have anyone else here for public comment? No, seeing none, I will close public comment. We'll move to item number 5, consent calendar. These are items considered routine in nature, and they're placed on consent calendar. They'll be considered as one item and voted upon in one vote unless individual consideration is requested. Each vote in favor of the consent calendar is considered and recorded as a separate affirmative vote in favor of each action listed. Approval of the consent calendar items include recitals, reading ordinances by titles only, and adoption of recommended actions contained in staff reports. Tonight we have 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, and 5.7. Is there anyone that would like any of these items pulled from consent calendar?
No.
Then I will need a motion.
A motion to approve consent calendar?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, regular calendar. 6.1, Resolution 2022-025, establishing 2022 Fresno County homeless priorities. Staff report by City Clerk Abigail Pelsgard, and presentation by Sonia M. De La Rosa, Program Administrator from the Homeless Liaison, Fresno County. Welcome.
And good afternoon. I do have Yvette Kirieva also with me. She will speak to the home allocation related to homelessness. So she'll have additional information. The presentation that you have includes both my slides and also hers towards the end, and it'll be a brief presentation. Last time I was before your council was back in 2019 when we adopted priorities for homelessness countywide. And those priorities were a total of 14 that were put together based on conversations with the cities and also conversations with our Department of Social Services, Behavioral Health, and Public Health. As a result of those, we had basically a plan to follow. Should any funding come into the county, we would allocate resources in that order. Since then, of course, we've had COVID, and many of the plans that we had in place, we actually implemented fairly quickly because we received a lot of one-time funding from the state. And that allowed us to increase the number of beds in the city of Fresno, which also provided them availability throughout the county. Your city in general has always had a small portion of homeless individuals, maybe a total of 3 at one time, I think. And as we go to the slide, we had our outreach team do a quick count, and it still remained at about 3 people. Again, these are people that likely do not stay in one location, so they may have gone back over to the Tulare County side as well. So in terms of accomplishments from those 14 priorities, these are a list. It's on slide 3. Some to point out would include the improved coordination between jurisdictions, including the railways. If Union Pacific or any railway goes through your jurisdiction, we actually have somebody that we can contact now, including individuals with the irrigation districts and other jurisdictions such as Caltrans. We did host virtual meetings with the different cities. Alex was a part of that conversation. We included the director of behavioral health at that time. Her name is Duan Utek. Our new director is Susan Holt, and we provided some information of the services that behavioral health provides throughout the county and also within your city. These services included Map Point. There is a location in Selma that if you needed to refer individuals, they could go to that site. It's run by Kingsview and provides a range of services. We also have mental health clinicians available. Turning Point also provides behavioral health services on behalf of the Department of Behavioral Health through a contract. And then our outreach team is actually through the PATH program, which is a program that includes a mental health clinician that could provide assessments real time on the street if the individual was to agree to that. There is an All for Youth partnership with the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, and there's engagement at your school district level for individuals that may be experiencing mental health issues. They actually have resources available, a mental health clinician that they could talk to. And we do have, there is an allocation for home key that's available now that we did not pursue as part of the county, simply because we want something in the rural community and we haven't yet identified a location. Last round, we did pursue a site within the city of Fresno, and we're looking to convert that to permanent affordable housing now that would be available to individuals that are very low average wage. So it would be area median income would be at less than 30%. So we're looking to convert those sites. So today we do have a resolution before your council to simply support the resolution that a Board of Supervisors approved on March 22nd. And this resolution identified the following priorities, which were outreach, relocation, sanitation, transportation, safe shelters, triage centers, transitional and affordable housing, wraparound services, job placement, and training. And what this means essentially is that when we receive additional funding that has some flexibility, that we would focus on these things to ensure that we're able to have a continuum in place to try to progress people through the system rather than keeping them simply in emergency housing. Like I said, our outreach team does rove throughout the county, including your city, when we do receive notice that there may be individuals within your city. At the last count, that was August of 2021, there were 3 people. Previously, I believe maybe you had 5 people, and they literally were right in the boundary between your city and Tulare County. And so at that time, we did send our outreach team out to the site. I'm not sure that you have anybody at that location now, but the last count, they had about 3 people that, again, likely migrate from one county to the other. And just to give you an idea of what the number looked like for the county and the different locations that our team goes to, Selma does continue to have a higher number at 50. And then Reedley would be next, and Parlier is also a high number. And high in terms of the size of the city that you have. So for engagement piece, for our outreach team, to give you an idea of what they provide in terms of services for individuals on the street, they do offer emergency shelter and transportation to shelter if they agree. Diversion, which means that we try to connect them back to their family and try to address whatever the issue was that resulted in their homelessness. We do sign them up for social services. There's actually a component on our outreach team that they come out and on the street will sign you up for CalFresh, Medi-Cal, General Relief, or food stamps. And they do provide food and hygiene packs while they're out there. And part of the reason we do that is to build some of the trust. You know, they basically know that when our van comes into town that they're going to receive some goods, and those goods do include some things that would be very helpful for them to have on the street. We do provide housing navigation, so you may have somebody that's not interested in engaging in services, but may be interested in housing, but doesn't want to come in until a bed opens up in a more desirable area for them. So they'll remain in contact with them. And again, mental health services is one of the options, and sometimes that is how they do end up in housing, is the availability of funds to specifically house individuals that need mental health or substance use disorder services. Domestic violence, similarly, if there's services that we could connect them to for domestic violence, then we will do that. And then, of course, many of our persons experiencing homelessness do have pets, and they want to make sure that they keep them, so we try to ensure that we also provide services to their pets. So what we ask for the different cities that we go to is just a partnership, continued partnership with law enforcement. I believe your chief is still Neil Dadian. Yes, so we have a pretty good relationship with Neil. And what we've done in the past is if they're coming into town, they'll reach out to your law enforcement agency to confirm if there's any, if there's a specific area that they should go to, but also if there's any issues. For example, if they are going to go to the site and there's been some sort of criminal element at the site, that way our outreach team is aware. We are going to participate in a rural needs assessment, and I'm actually going to involve the cities with the larger number of homeless individuals. And part of that is just try to determine what else do we need in the rural community that would be beneficial to the people that are from those communities. In most instances, the people are not going to travel to Fresno, even though the bedding's available, the housing's available there. They're not going to travel. So what could we do in the meantime that would help them? So there'll be actually a consultant that will come in and actually have some of those conversations. If you're interested, I could, invite you to those meetings. I mean, it's not necessarily related to Kingsburg, but it would be something that may be beneficial to your team. And throughout the county and unincorporated areas, there are between 15 and 25 unduplicated individuals that our team reaches out to every month. So there is a growing number of homeless population. And again, the mental health assessments are done real time on the street. One of the things that we are moving forward with as part of the county is a multi-agency response to community-wide homelessness. That team will include the superintendent of schools, the continuum of care, representatives from Madera County as well. And the reason for that is because Madera and Fresno actually share a continuum of care. That continuum of care receives funds from the federal government and then implements services throughout our county. So our thought is that if we involve all these different entities, that we'll be better able to respond to homelessness community-wide and actually regionally. So we'll have a team that's actually moving forward with that, and we'll be able to provide some input as to what would most benefit our schools, our school-aged children, and other folks that we want to target in terms of providing additional services and, again, other resources that may be available cross-jurisdictionally. So now with that, I'm going to turn it over to Yvette, who will discuss the home funds that are available. You got to use the arrows.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. It's been a while since I've been out here. It's nice to be able to come out again, I missed my annual visits to all my cities. So I was telling the staff, I go, after elections I go because sometimes there's new people and they need to know what we do for them, So your city is a participant of the Fresno County's Joint Powers Agreement, where you participate in our CDBG and our home program. So if you don't remember that, because it's been a couple of years. And so this last year, the County of Fresno, through our JPA, we received what's called home ARP monies, the American Rescue Plan. So we received a special allocation of our home program. So normally we have home monies that is first come, first serve, and I'm very excited. I'm actually mad that the date changed from the 13th to the 25th now, I believe. You guys know that, right? Because I barely found that out. And stuff for your Linnea, for the grand opening. So that was utilized, the home funds that the county gets. You guys are a part of that. So this special allocation is actually for homelessness or families at risk of homelessness. So it's the first time we receive funds that is very specific. Normally we're given freedom and what we need and how we fund it. But this one, the county received $4.2 million. That we are already talking to our different partner cities like yourselves to discuss how we want to invest that money and in what community and what we want to do. And so the funds are for specific qualifying populations. So they can only be used for individuals who are homeless, at risk of homelessness, or vulnerable, some other vulnerable populations, which is like domestic violence and human trafficking and veterans. So these funds are very specific. And even as we talk about the special populations, like the veterans, they still have to be homeless veterans. They can't just be veterans. And the funds have a couple of different uses that we can have, and we can use it for tenant-based rental assistance, which is like a Section 8 voucher, where we would help pay, their rent to live somewhere else. The problem with that is that it's only good for 4 years. So after 4 years, or we run out of money, they're homeless again, right? Or if they haven't, been able to find a job or other things. So the money can be utilized for that. It could also pay for supportive services, as we've learned, and you can see everything that Sonia went through. A lot of the homeless populations come with other needs. They need the services, not just the housing. So if you can provide them housing, but without the support, without the mental health, without maybe some food assistance, other things to help their children get through the process, they won't be as successful to be put back into the mainstream. So they do allow us to utilize a small portion of the funds for this money for supportive services, but it's only again for a couple of years, for the first couple of years of the program. Then after that, it's gone. Additionally, the funds can be used for the acquisition and development of non-congregate shelters or for rental units. So non-congregate shelters means that we can't pay just for a shelter. You know, you're going to come and everybody sleeps in a room. It's going to be more like where people have single room occupancies or they have their own sleeping quarters. And it's more like a home that almost everybody wants. Or you can do rental apartments. So the funds are either for that or for rental housing. And the populations that we can serve is homeless or at risk of being homeless, meaning that they might be living with someone or they've been behind in the rent, they might be getting evicted, they're fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking. And other populations that, like I said, that we mentioned, that they're requiring services, they're at risk of their housing is unstable, things of that sort, and veterans families. So those are the populations that whatever we decide to spend these funds on will be servicing. And we have to service actually all of the populations. That was something I learned later, just recently in a webinar when we were listening to. We thought, oh, we can build a shelter just for domestic violence or do something like that. And there was no. It actually, somehow you have to have it available for all of the populations that it's supposed to service. So we're just in the process. Everything we get from the federal government has red tape. You guys know that. All the wonderful paper we require you guys to spend your $2. And so one of the things we have to do to have these funds is we have to do a home allocation plan. So we have to do a plan on how we plan to use the money. In order to do that, we actually have to interview, do surveys, and talk to providers of homeless and then our partners. So this will be one of the things where we're in the process of creating a survey that we're going to send to our cities, that we're going to send to some of the providers of the homelessness, and also speak to the clients themselves. Once we do this whole survey, we might do some roundtables of people and talk about what are the needs. We're supposed to identify the needs of Fresno County, of our 7 cities, and the unincorporated communities are these things, and then we're supposed to try and then provide that with the $4.2 million they gave us. So the task is pretty daunting. The funds are not enough. What I envision, one of the things that might happen is with the $4.2 million, we might be able to build a very small complex somewhere in one of our cities, maybe like an 8-plex or something like that. And looking at what the population is, I don't think we'd ever want to do a big, complex in one of our partner cities. Some of our cities are interested in discussing what the possibilities, how we can use the funds. And some of the city managers have already expressed that, and I'll be talking to them. Some of the cities that have the bigger populations, like Selma and Reedley, of course, I think are the ones that are more interested. But I'd like to hear, if you guys would like to share that either now or through your city manager on your concerns or any uses you'd like with this funds.
Council discussion?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So this program, that $4.2 million, I guess I'm maybe looking for a priority schedule for you guys or how you're looking to spend, specifically in regards to if you're trying to use this money to sustain people that are currently homeless, or if you're trying to spend that money to develop them so they're no longer homeless, as opposed to continue to give them everything for free, or is there an educational element so that they're no longer at that level?
So because of what we historically do over in community development, we are used to building apartments. We help people fix their homes, we help people buy homes. So for us to get money that was homeless, we're like, ooh, that's a little bit out of our wheelhouse. I'll be very honest with you. I used to work with the Housing Authority before this career, and so I was part of the continuum of care. So I am familiar, and I did some of the homeless counts myself. And my first feeling is do what we're good at doing and building something that becomes permanent housing where people are moving, because it's the continuum, as we mentioned, from this end to this end. And so we're closer to the more permanent part where, they might have some people that, the outreach teams bring into a shelter bed, then they put them into the next phase. So when people are going through the continuum of homelessness to permanent housing, eventually, hopefully, home ownership someday, you can go from homeless to home ownership. And there's a different continuum of that. We are more familiar with the permanent part of it, where they're going to be more in a regular thing. knowing though that they come in and they need some supportive services. So the supportive services component is key. When we talk to the continuum of care and providing the services, I don't have the money for the services. I have money for services for like 2 years. So if I put someone into housing and then after 2 years my services disappear, we're not going to sustain them in a sense unless they're further down the process. So it really depends what we identify as partners and what the needs are, and saying, okay, this is a need, but we don't have enough resources to do that need. Maybe we have resources to do this need. So that's why HUD's requiring us to do this allocation plan. So I can't even say, I want to do this. It's going to be more like what the surveys tell us and what everything else. But in order for us to implement something, we will not implement something that's not going to have the money to be sustainable and that it's going to be able to continue long term.
Well, you said the housing's not sustainable, right? Because you can house them for 4 years and then they're going to have to
No,
pay.
if I use the money for vouchers, and that's one of the uses that you can use it for, and that's what I'm saying. Personally, I think even if you asked a homeless person, would you like to live in an apartment, or would you like me to give you a voucher for 4 years, up to 4 years, if the money lasts that long, and then you're done. So these are the things that they highlighted that the money could be used for. What we end up using it for is once we do these surveys and these discussions that we have. So if you have a preference, definitely share it.
For sure, I have a preference.
Yes, and that's why I'm saying when we're doing these surveys, that's going to say the need is for this kind of housing. And so when I finally do my findings to HUD, say I talked to 200 people, including my city councils, these 10 agencies and these 20 homeless people, and this is what they said they need. And this is what we think we can do with the money to provide that need. Now, there might be 10 needs, and we can't provide them all, but what the money is able to do when we can provide, that's where we're going to do the analysis and then present to HUD, and they have to approve it, saying, yes, we think you're right. You proved that there's a need and that you can meet that need.
Thank you.
So what do you think we need?
I think it's obviously homelessness is a big problem. We're fortunate that it's not a huge problem in Kingsburg yet. It's just any time that there is government funds allocated, I would like to see there be an educational element so that this doesn't become just a free place to live forever. I would rather it be something to where you can use that as a time to build yourself up, get yourself to a place where you can be self-sustainable as opposed to governmentally sustainable. That's my preference, is it be more of a pass-through program. It's something to help somebody when they're down. I think that those services, all these services, that should be the intent, is to help people when they need it, but not necessarily become a crutch to not go out and develop themselves.
Along that same lines with maybe having ties to like our local city, the adult schools or community colleges.
Just something so they have
with counselors.
They have opportunities to better themselves. There's a little bit of ownership with getting out of getting out of that situation too.
And I think every situation is different. So they obviously, unhoused people aren't just unhoused for no reason, right? So as you mentioned, domestic violence as well. You're not gonna just be like, oh, you can live here and not provide them resources. As you mentioned, you guys partner with like DDS or Department of Services. You're also collaborating with Medi-Cal and food stamps and CalFresh. And the question that I had to kind of piggyback off of that, because I think you're right, education is huge and important. If we're not giving them that equity piece, though, we're missing it all. But yeah, education is huge. With that being said, I don't know if you can answer this question for me, because it was kind of lingering in the back of my head. But when people are applying for the Medi-Cal or for the food stamps and things like that, are they provided with a way, because everything is electronic now. I know you need an address in order to, right? Is there a street? Is it going to be the new place that they're at? Do you know what I'm saying? And if they want to apply for a job, like how are we encouraging that? Because I think it piggybacks off of your concern of like, we want to get ahead of that. And especially I love the at-risk part as well. I think that's like, oh, we're hitting it before it's hard for them.
So that's part of what our outreach team does also, and even when we do connect them to services, there's actually case managers that'll work with them, or what they call navigators that'll help them navigate so that they can then go through the continuum. So you're right. One of the things that we found through COVID, when we had all these beds that we were able to open up immediately, we brought everybody in. You can't move anybody because COVID. You got to keep them forever. One of the things that happened though is that we weren't moving anybody. So then you get people used to not paying rent. You get people used to not paying anything. Really, everything was being brought to you, including food. And then once you start to that the engine back up is people have to start, okay, you do have to move here from here. We don't, you don't get to stay here forever. Our triage centers are actually supposed to be 90-day stays. In some instances, if you receive an okay from the Department of Social Services, they'll extend your stay. But that then means that you have to be progressing towards a housing plan. You can't just be. And although we will bring you in housing first, we want to get you in, we want you to have the treatment, the care that you need, there is also an engagement piece where we want you to, evolve. You can't just stay, in the emergency bed. There is a thought that you're going to evolve. So what the system has done through the continuum of care and through the providers that we have in place is you will come through emergency in some instances. In other instances, you may go straight into what we call bridge housing, which means we've identified a place for you. We're just getting all your documents ready now. All your documents are being pulled in, your driver's license, your ID, your whatever it is that you need in order to be housed, and then transitioning into and then looking for an actual place to stay. One of the drawbacks, though, is that there's very limited space right now. The vacancy rate is almost non-existent for one-bedroom sites. There is some vacancy for other sites, and like Yvette said, this would be an opportunity to add additional housing. Not a lot, but some. And these would be people that would have to be self-sustaining at some level. Right. And if not, then they would have to be people that receive a subsidy. That we certainly can't support them forever. Now, the piece that does help is that if a person is brought in and they do need continued behavioral, some sort of mental health or substance use or another type of assistance, then that's the partnership that then would be developed through these discussions, because more often than not, when you've had somebody on the street for a long time, they need to be reintegrated into almost relearning the skills of what do you do when you're a homeowner, what do you do when you have a place that you actually have to take care of. Even if you receive some sort of subsidy, whether it's Social Security or some other type of assistance, there is a retraining that happens, and it's education not just in terms of trying to improve your income, it's education in the form of learning how to take care of a place again. So
that's just the fraction of people that actually want to have
Yes.
homes.
Do that.
Yes,
I think
there's
we do need to
certain
speak to
Yeah.
the fact that there's a relevant portion of homeless people that have no interest in having homes of any kind.
And they're not ready. They're simply not ready. I mean, and that's the reality, is they're just not ready. It's not that they don't want a place, it's just perhaps it's not their time, and that's okay. That's where you have the outreach team engaging them. I mean, they're engaging people that need medical care. And, and one of the thoughts is, okay, why aren't you taking medical care to them? Well, part of that is, we can't bring somebody to you and force you to accept that care of the wound care that you need or anything like that. It's part of that engagement. So if my outreach team comes out to your town and familiarizes himself with an individual that needs care and is able to convince them to at the very least have it cleaned up, and then while they're there apply for Medi-Cal and all these other things, then that's already starting to improve their well-being. So that some of that happens on the street, but for people that are going to go into these units, you are going to have some level of stability for them to be successful. And so for the others, I mean, there are other services available that we would be able to connect them to.
And you guys are looking for a place to build, similar to, I believe Hanford's currently building a large complex, similar?
They are. Yes,
Right?
they are.
Are you guys looking for a place that's similar to that system and setup
So
in
that's a lot
Fresno
bigger. Are you
County?
familiar with that site?
I know a little, but not enough how they're running it and stuff.
So we went to visit, I went with the rescue mission to Austin to look at a couple sites. There's a location there where actually it started off like an old RV type setup, and that's in the county where they're at. And so we took a look at that, and that's actually part of what's being the idea of what's going on in Kings County. And we're certainly not looking for something at that scale. One of the things that works, and we're using some of our American Rescue money to partner with like the rescue mission, because if I go to the rescue mission and I give them a certain amount of money to buy prefabricated homes, I give them the money, they get the homes, they could operate it without me. And so that makes sense to do. Like what Yvette's saying, it doesn't make sense for us to drop a duplex or a fourplex or something, and then
You're not
without all
landlords.
the
Right.
without all the services, because it's going to fail. So It probably makes sense at a smaller scale. Your city is, I mean, it has a smaller population, but you probably have people that are at risk of homelessness too, that may be identified through the process. So what we're trying to do is actually be very calculated about where it is that we go. Through COVID, we used a hotel in Selma. And Selma happens to have a high homeless population, but they thought that we impacted their homeless population even more. And the truth of it is that they already have a high homeless population. But when we approached them about potentially using home key money for a site, or even Reedley, using home key money for a site, they took a step back and were like, well, wait a minute, not ready. But home key is also another resource that's available, that if you had an old hotel that you're wanting to convert, you actually don't have to convert it into emergency housing. You could convert it into affordable housing. It's just a matter of applying for that money and then having a developer that you can work with, even if it's the housing authority, to convert that site. So again, it really is just a conversation, and then if you are gonna try to focus on that specific population that requires a little bit more care, then you have to have the supportive services attached to it.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys' effort in all this. I don't think Kingsburg is a very good applicant for a homeless development, personally.
And that's understandable.
I know, as my constituents are very clear about that. That is one thing that they are crystal clear with. But I think that the program is important. I do.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a partnership. It may not be in Kingsburg, it may be in Selma, but hey, by the way, if we do have somebody in Kingsburg, then you have a closer place to refer them to. And with your cities, what we found is, they're from your city. They don't want to go to Fresno. They don't want to go to Coalinga. They want to stay in the area that they have connection. And so going to Selma sounds a lot better than going all the way to Fresno.
Where is Map Point located in Selma?
I could send you the address. I'm not familiar with what the address is, but there is a site, and I know they do work quite a bit with the Selma Police Department.
And is Turning Point still in Selma, or is it in a different location?
There's a contracted provider. It's either Turning Point or it's Kingsview. But there are mental health services throughout, and one of the things that I was working on as part of the conversation with the different representatives was an actual list of people that they could reach out to through the superintendent of schools or through the providers themselves. So I'll be having a list for you, and it'll identify whether it's Turning Point or Kingsview that you would reach out to.
I know that, I know of one issue. I don't know if the money could be used towards this, but I know, like, in our town, because I'm also in the school system, is All for Youth, and I don't know how many other therapists are struggling, but when the schools are closed, they have nowhere to meet their students. And so, I mean, if there was a location in our town, like if it was a building or, I don't know, some place that could be provided from some of that money, where they're not having to drive to Fresno, because when the schools are closed right now, it's extended because there is summer school. And so like at the end of June, they're not going to have anywhere to meet with their students for about 2 months. And those families, if they can't drive to Fresno, then that's going to be an issue. But also for those parents that maybe don't want their kids pulled out of class, maybe want to go meet with the therapist. I know that our town uses All for Youth a lot. Like, they can't take any more kids because we've had so many. So I know that is a need in our town. I know just because we don't see, we have 3 that are considered homeless, 3 people probably that you can see living on the streets. That doesn't mean that we don't have, 100 or more in our school district, because they're living with grandparents or doubled up or tripled up. And I know you probably have a way of looking at that. We tag them, we know who they are, and they are marked as homeless when they're living together, but those might be those people that are at risk. So
Would the city be able to utilize, I'm thinking like the senior center usually closes at a certain point, usually around 2-ish, I think. What time does your center close? Is that something that can be done after? And I'm even just thinking, I know like Linnea has that great new community center, like reaching out to the housing authority. They're a member of the continuum of care.
and we can.
Marion Villas has a community center there too, and reaching out. These are already partners that are in your community. They already are working with the homelessness in other communities. Like she said, I kind of envision like whatever we end up doing is going to be with the housing authority or with with some of the other providers that are working with DBH, because it is a special clientele. It's not my regular people like my Marion Villas people, and they do need the supportive services. They need the education, the re-education actually of a lot of things they're saying to integrate back into the community. But utilizing these partners already, I think that would be I could see the housing authority allowing that, or even like utilizing your senior center, which I'm very excited we're putting on some solar.
Or if they can go to Selma, if that's a location that would work because it's so much closer, that's possible. But let me find out through the behavioral health department, because this should be something that could be addressed. I mean, I know they're very happy with what All for Youth is doing, and if it's something that could enhance the program, I think they would be definitely for it. The Housing Authority is a very good partner of ours, and so if we were to make a request, I'm sure they would be more than happy to meet whatever that need is. But yeah, that is something that we definitely want to address. So I'm glad you're mentioning that, because one of the things is that we've heard such good things about what All for Youth is doing, and the fact that it's being used as much as it is I think is a wonderful.
It's incredible.
thing.
Yeah, you don't want to lose the progress for those 2 months that's happening.
And it'll make a difference for homeless populations in the future, because there's things that are being addressed by this group that, quite frankly, we wouldn't find out until
Like
these
reporting.
folks were adults.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll definitely I'll have probably an answer for you fairly quickly. So I'll reach out to Abigail or to Alex and let you know.
Thank you.
I have one more question. When it comes to, because what our mayor mentioned was that sometimes families are considered homeless because they might not be living
Yes.
in the streets, but they are living, couch surfing or what have you. So with that being said, I know you guys mentioned there's a portion of the funds that are going towards at-risk population or at risk of homelessness, right? What does that look like? Like, what does that support look like? Oh, you're behind on your rent, or let me help you get a better job. What does that look like?
So the definitions for HUD vary based on the program. So it was funny because that was one of the very first things I had to do. And okay, they're giving me this homeless money? Homeless, what does that mean? Because it means very differently. If it's like McKinney Act funds, if it's CDBG funds, if it's home funds,
if it's school,
it's
it's very
completely different
Yes.
definitions. So I had to go look up which definition they were using for these funds. And so it is actually very complicated, so I can't give you an easy answer, but some of that does include kind of like the couch surfing, like you're saying. I have to identify that there's like some overcrowding, that they shouldn't be living together. So that's considered at risk of homelessness, or because the at risk is that they're paying a bigger percentage of their income towards the rent. So if you're spending 70% of your paycheck on rent, do you think you might be at risk of becoming homeless? Probably, because if your car breaks down, you need new tires, you might not pay the rent, then you're going to get evicted. Yeah, if you're behind on your rent, that's at risk of becoming homeless because you're being evicted or you're going through these process. So when you talk about what I can build, those are the people, to be honest with you, that I think, because I want to build like a real building. I don't want to just pay rent for 4 years and it disappears and is done. I go, if I'm going to go through all this work, hopefully there's something that's going to stay there and be more sustainable. Some of these families that they just can't afford the higher rents. They still work. They get paid minimum wage. You work hard and you just barely making up, but the rents are going crazy. Am I right? It's just crazy. I tell people, I think we're in a twilight zone. It just doesn't seem normal, even for our valley, because so many people moved here, especially during COVID. It's impacted the rents even higher. So now our regular people that are going to be, waiting your tables, are going to be washing your cars and doing things, can't afford the rent because it's gone up $200-300, and that's their car payment or that's their food money. So
that support would look like.
So the rents and it would be lower, yeah.
Yeah, subsidies.
So because of how we give them the money, we're going to give, let's say this $4 million becomes an interest-free, zero payment loan. And so the developer doesn't have a loan to a bank when they build it. So if they're able to magically build something for $1 million, which you probably can't because of the price of everything, but let's say they can build something and they had to get no other loans from anything. Now they can maybe charge the rents of $500 because they can still pay the property manager, they can pay the water bill, they can pay the lights, they can pay all these other things and keep the building looking like a nice building because we don't want anything ugly. And I make sure that doesn't happen when I go inspect them every year, and I'll be here, in a couple of weeks inspecting Marion and stuff. But anyways, those are the things that we have to make it affordable. So we have to pencil out that they're going to be there sustainable long term. So that's what I'm saying. When we decide what can we do, is going to be they're going to charge rents. They're going to have to charge rents. It's not going to be free.
And we want them to charge rent.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want, like you said, we don't want people just staying there and, not being responsible, because anywhere you go, you're gonna have to pay something.
Yeah, but the thing is, the rents might still be too low, and that's where the housing authority has an advantage over other developers, because they can put their subsidies, they're like Section 8 kind of vouchers, and they can actually collect more rent from the federal government, and then they have more money to maintain it and keep it better and provide other things that they can do, when a private developer might not have access to that. But if we get partners, if we get like Turning Point that says, we're willing to come and provide the counseling for free because those clients are going to meet my needs, then that's something that we don't have to budget in. So it's going to be about who we can partner with and what we can do.
And the services are free, but they're actually reimbursable, through Medi-Cal or through other resources. And that's usually how those services are then provided.
Where can we find the homeless counts that you brought up in there? Where can we find that for all communities in Fresno County?
Or for the multi-agency, or
So
for
you had a slide in here that was showing that we have 3 and Selma has 50. That slide specifically. Where do you guys keep that data?
We actually have our outreach team track that data.
She said path?
That was our.
Where can I
path-
find that
yeah.
online?
You can't find it online because we actually did a real-time count. So the point-in-time count is a count that's done by our COC. It's done every year. So if you were to look up at HUD, you would actually find that information.
I see it
The
from
one that-
2020. I don't see anything from
the one
2021.
we just did one. We didn't do 2021 because of COVID. 2022 is the one that's going to come out next.
When will
But-
that
And
come
we
out?
just did that. It should be out hopefully by June. Usually it's June.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But it will not break it down by communities like you're asking. It's going to be
Is there a
a
way for us
total
to
wide
get
for us.
that
No.
That slide that you had?
The slide that I had our outreach team go and actually count the people. So typically that doesn't happen. The point in time count is a visual count one night in January. This year it was in February because it was still cold, but one night in January, last 10 days of January, you go out and you do the count.
Yep.
And then the next 2 days you actually go out and do surveys. If you're interested in that, I think Selma had a team that actually went out and did a count of individuals for this community here. I'm not sure if your city participated in that, but
And that's what I was going to
it's
say.
usually volunteers.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Some cities are not counted because there's no one that volunteers to count those cities. So when the numbers are given to HUD, they're all lumped as Fresno County and all the 15 cities. We were trying to find numbers to do that with our RENA, with the housing numbers we're going to be splitting up, because that was something we said, well, if there's homelessness, that should be taken into consideration. We couldn't find anything. Trust me, and I'm into data, and I couldn't find it. I had my staff looking. So
I'll look for it. Once we receive it, I'll share it with you. Because usually there's some sort of press that's done, so I'll share it through the email that I sent to the city managers. I'll send it to you. You'll have an idea, and it splits it up between Fresno City, Fresno County, and then Madera.
I just want to say thank you for all of the work that you're doing. I appreciate it. I know we heard that we have 3 unhoused people in Kingsburg, but I know that is not the truth. I know that is not the truth. So with that being said, I think that we are known for being one of the best towns in the valley. And June let us know, right? We love people, and we put people first. And I hope that we can see this as not a problem, but a problem with their people. So it's not nobody wakes up one day and says, I don't want a home. I don't want to live there. Will they accept the help? That is a relevant question. So I appreciate what you're doing, and trying to find that at risk for me is huge, because when people are applying for food stamps, well, you have to ask, right? How much is your rent? How much do you make every month? When we see those risks, let's try to nip them in the bud as soon as we can.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen is you're going to be bundled up in homes, and you're going to end up either couch surfing or in the streets or getting moved to Selma. I don't know. But at the end of the day, these are people, not a problem. And I really appreciate you guys taking it that way and having that angle, because we can do better.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And I would love to see us partner more, even though we don't see it as a problem. Once again, the 3, it is. And so I want to see us to be, the city as a whole, be more active. With this resolution, this facility can be built in anywhere in the county?
So this resolution actually has to do more so with how we allocate the funds in the future. It's not related to this funding that you have. The funding, I mean, is actually because you're one of the participating cities. And I think that's part of the discussion that Yvette will have with you in the future as to where it makes the most sense to do something and what that something looks like. And I think it's going to be informed through the surveys and some of the information that Lena actually asked for me. Through COVID, we actually developed a very good list of providers that are on the street providing services to individuals that include the medical folks, the mental health folks. So I think it's a broader perspective of what you view as a homeless provider. It's not just the person at the shelter that's offering a bed. It's actually even the medical community, the federally qualified health centers, the behavioral health people, the clinicians. That combination of people is really the broader umbrella of who is going to look, where it potentially would make the most sense and what it is, what it looks like.
I have a preference, for the funding. I think the highest percentage of homeless are mentally ill or substance abuse. So I think that's a high priority where funding should go. I know there is a very high need for housing, but like you said, you have to be self-sustaining, and without mental help and substance abuse health, there's no way they're going to be self-sustaining.
Yeah.
So that's my first preference would be for that, and of course, I know housing is very high priority. There's, like you said, it's hard to find even a one bedroom apartment.
Yeah, and
that's what I'd like to see.
And sometimes what will happen is for the supportive piece is we could leverage the funds. You could use it to pay a portion of something, and something else can be used to support it as well. And again, it's just a mix of funds that's used to actually provide the service. And so that would be something to definitely consider, and it could be a partnership with our behavioral health department. So you're not just using these funds alone. It's actually maybe even an existing contract that we could add to, which is what we do with our outreach team.
Right.
They're already out there doing the outreach for the clinical mental health piece, and we added to it, hey, while you're out there, get all our, connect with all our rural sites and any unincorporated areas.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. And then last thing, so with our specifically disabled people who are elderly as well, they live on SSI, and that's like nothing a month, and that's really hard for them. So with that being said, I think it'd be super important for us to have some resources at our senior center, Alex, and the front of City Hall. Anything that you guys can connect us with when it comes to specifically in the senior center for disabled folks or elderly care, because that's a huge, if you don't have retirement, some folks don't. And then any resources available for us to display, we can put them in our carrier, anything like that, just so that, if you're coming into City Hall or you're paying your bill or doing whatever, you don't have to grab it, you don't have to pick it up. Maybe we have it on our website and things, and we might already, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But anyways, just would love to see that partnership.
I know that we would. I don't know if we have a new, I'll make sure that we've sent the most recent, that we have our HARP program, which is our Housing Assistance Rehabilitation Program, is really used a lot by the elderly. So I have a lady here, an elderly woman who's applied, and that's actually the only application I'm working on right now for my HARP program, because of COVID, a lot of people didn't want this in their house. And she actually applied, I will not lie to you, 3 times. Her husband kept backing out. And so finally he passed away. And so now she has the power for us to go fix her house. And we just went and saw it, and it's a horrible house. Like, the foundation is cracked. I mean, my rehab guy was like, she shouldn't be living in there. And so I'm like, well, we need to make this work. There's only one bad thing about Kingsburg, because it's a great place. Your housing values are really high. And HUD says my house value has to be for a modest home. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she might be too high when we do her appraisal. And I'm just like, let's keep our fingers crossed that she's not, because it has to be an appraisal after rehab. But yeah, her son's a disabled son. She's an elderly person, and she's been wanting to fix her house for her son, for the wheelchair, for her, and so we're really hoping to get that house going. So
That's in Kingsburg?
yes, yeah. It's actually, when I was in Linnea training the manager, I'm like, I'm gonna go see Miss Guzman's house, and go by, because I haven't seen it in a couple of years, because she applied every couple of years, and he'd get real close, and one time we're like, ready to sign the papers, and he walked out. It is a loan, because it's a loan. zero interest, but it makes it affordable, and the payments are affordable what they can afford. So a minimum payment of $40 at least, just so they remember they have a loan. We used to not even charge them a payment, so when they passed away, they could pay us, but then the kids are like, who are you? Why do we owe you $50,000? Mom and Dad never said, And I'm like, yeah, we just put a loan there forever, and now they get mad at us. So now if they pay something, they at least know we exist. And then we can help more people in the future. So we'll make sure I have those flyers, because it might have been a while since we've done the newer ones. And that's how we get a lot of people when they walk into your city halls to pay their water bill and do things like that.
When you're going to do your surveys on priorities, you mentioned that you'll be surveying people that are homeless. I'd be really interested to see what they list as their priorities, and because it's a different perspective than I have. Any more council discussion?
Just one thing, it's not so much for you, or even a reflection on you, but at an event that Mayor North and I were at, we had a chance to sit down and speak with Council Member Amanda Saltre from Hanford. Please reach out to her regarding the homeless development and what that's doing to their town before we make any decisions. It's catastrophic for her district right now. So just get her perspective from it. Just reach out before we really look into that at all.
When we had the meeting with the city manager, so everything, I'm sure Alex will remember, when we explained to him that we got this money, I was like, no one is going to be forced to take this money. And I go, you're our partner. And as a city, every time we fund an apartment complex, or if we, do that, we require that the developer have a letter of support from the city. If there's no letter of support, then I don't consider giving them money. So that is the county's process. We work for you. That's how I tell people we're your housing provider, and that we help you what you need. And so trust me, your staff know what you guys want, and they let me know as well. And we're not going to come and force anything on any city. And if no city wants it and we don't find a place in the county, then I guess we send it back to HUD. I mean, that can be done, but there is a need. And like I said, there were 2 cities that stepped up. One city stepped up, and then another city letter came back. I'm like, oh, now there's 2. Okay, good, because I didn't know if there'd be anybody.
But I think one of the things about having funds like this, it may not work for your city, but if you support a city that's adjacent to you, it's gonna help your city. And, and that's one of the benefits of, and I know you have like a 5-city group or a 7-city group, that might be the better way to do it, is where it makes the most sense. At one time, we had talked about, okay, putting something in Orange Cove doesn't make sense. I mean, who's gonna go all the way to Orange Cove? I mean, just in terms of geographically what makes the most sense, and that's something that your cities have to decide. Where does it make the most sense for you? Selma would be great because it's right there, but is Reedley something that you would consider? So that would be, or maybe even 2 sites may make a little more sense.
It's only so much with $4 million.
Yeah.
On top of that, it's like, I think, Had, you're asking for us too much to do with $4 million. So we'll see what we can do, and what are people willing, what our cities are willing and able to do, and what the need is.
And when that time comes, we can make that decision.
Absolutely.
And probably what's going to happen.
It's not our decision.
There might
Outside
not.
of Kingsburg, it's not our decision.
No, so I was going to say there might not be a decision for you to make. Yeah.
If that happens.
Because the other thing is, I have to have a developer that's willing to manage it. That's,
Absolutely.
we have to have someone who's willing to build it. There has to be land that's zoned for it. I mean, there's so many hurdles.
We understand.
Yeah.
We understand. We get it.
So the resolution that we have before us, in passing that, what we are agreeing to, if that's what we decide to do, is that we are supporting the 15 incorporated cities on these 7 priorities, correct? Okay.
And that's separate from this money.
And you're actually,
I understand.
what you're doing is you're supporting the resolution that was adopted by the Board of Supervisors, and that resolution lists those 7 priorities. And part of the priorities, as you were talking about, that more elderly population, we have seen more in the homeless population. And one of the things that we are targeting is just finding beds that are a little bit more ambulatory for people that are older, because that's the population that we're seeing now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more council discussion? No? Okay, so what is recommended action is to adopt Resolution 2022-025 to support the County of Fresno Board of Supervisors resolution regarding homelessness priorities. So if that is something that we are looking to do, I'll need a motion for that.
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. On to item 6.2, award of the Madison Avenue Bike Trail Project to Donberry Construction in the amount of $137,460. Staff report and presentation given by our city engineer, Dave Peters.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I wanted to provide an update and request action on the second phase of our Madison Avenue Bike Trail project. First phase of the project was constructed many years ago from Sierra to Stroud. Recently just got a asphalt slurry seal treatment as part of our Madison Avenue roadway reconstruction project. So this second phase would extend the trail from Stroud all the way up to Cam Avenue. We've completed design and right-of-way phases of the project. The right-of-way phase included acquisition of property on the east side of Madison up near Cam. So that has closed escrow. The right-of-way has been cleared. So we're asking tonight for you to award the contract to Donberry Construction in the amount of $137,460. Donberry's done several projects for the city recently, and we're very happy with them as a contractor. If awarded, the project would start on the 30th of the month. That's the Monday after Memorial Day, and we're anticipating that it will finish on June 24th. So be ready for the 4th of July. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Will you need to close that road?
No. The roadway is not being reconstructed. It's just the trail. So we actually have a project to reconstruct the roadway, but that's about a year out.
Any council discussion, questions? I'm excited to finally see this start.
I was about to say that. I was going to say the same thing.
And to get to this point, right?
Well, and it will, so the trail will go now from Cam to Sierra. Obviously, there's another section of this trail that was constructed as part of the Hash subdivision all the way down to 396, and we're also working on a crosswalk at Sierra and Madison with the rapid flashing beacons. So we have a very nice long stretch of trail when this gets completed.
Okay, if there's no council discussion, then the staff recommends the award of the Madison Avenue Bike Trail Project to Donberry Construction in the amount of $137,460. If this is something we'll want to move forward with, I'll need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6.3, draft capital improvement projects for 2022-2023. Staff report and presentation by City Manager Alexander Henderson.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. As part of our ongoing budget development for fiscal year 2023, I'm including tonight a draft capital improvement project plan for the coming year. I would say that this is probably about 85% complete, but certainly public input and the council's input is something that we also want to include. And so tonight's report is informational to get feedback, and then ultimately this entire document will be part of your consideration with the full budget approval that will come in June. This evening we are outlining 59 projects for fiscal year 2023 that total a little over $9 million. Those come from various funding sources, including grants, federal grants that we have obtained as well. For comparative purposes, in fiscal year 22, a total of 54 projects totaling roughly $5.8 million were approved. I've included a status report on those projects as well. You heard a verbal report on that at our last meeting. As part of the CIP discussion, we'll also be reviewing proposed street improvement plans for the upcoming year. The city maintains a pavement management system which identifies the condition of city streets and provides as a guide for annual maintenance activities. We've identified several streets for inclusion in project year 2023. In addition to the overall condition assessment that is provided by the pavement management system, we also give consideration to roads that are the most highly trafficked. So, for example, 18th Avenue, a portion of 18th Avenue is included for your consideration, just based upon how many vehicles per day travel that stretch. So I'll start with the roads that we're the projects that we're looking at for the upcoming year, and then I'll get more in depth in the other items that we have proposed this evening. So obviously the largest one is the Sierra Bethel roundabout that will be constructed using 100% of federal dollars. I know Dave just opened that bid earlier this week, and so came in, I think,
A little under budget.
a little under budget, so that's always a good thing. We have 10th Avenue that stretch from Stroud Avenue to Cam Avenue, 18th Avenue from Earl Street to Kern, 18th Avenue, the southbound lanes, the portion north of Cam to basically the city limits, just north of track 61, 67. And then 22nd Avenue, there's a portion of that road from Sierra to Orange that's also proposed. That stretch is getting much more traffic now, obviously, with there's a connection of 22nd to the Summerlin project to the south. I'll go over just a few of the other items. I'll try and highlight them, but then certainly happy to answer any questions that council may have. So there's a handful of planning items that we're investing in this year. So those include the strategic plan update. Last was completed in 2018, so 2018 to 2023. So preparing to hold those workshops and update that document. Our housing element, which the council has discussed recently, the sixth cycle, which we are participating with the Fresno Council of Governments, a multi-jurisdictional housing element is included in the coming year. There's new state legislation with regards to how often we have to update our impact fee, our developer impact fee, our nexus study. So those are the fees that we collect for new development, whether that's residential or commercial. So those have to be updated every 5 years now. Ours was last completed in 2016, so that is recent legislation, so we'll be updating that in the new fiscal year. Our emergency operations and our continuing that plan was last updated in 2010. So council has awarded that contract. We did some of that work this year, but the majority of that will occur in the next fiscal year. And then our urban water management plan, I think, is updated every 5 years. So there's a requirement to update that. So that's planned for the coming year. We're continuing. They're not necessarily capital projects, but we usually include it in this discussion. Just our continued funding of our business retention and attraction incentives. So we have a handful of them. We have the facade and alley improvement programs. We have our matching. We have our micro grant program. We have our program that helps share some of the costs for the improvements that are required to update buildings, which is can be a challenge, obviously, because our buildings are 100 years old. So whether that be fire sprinklers or ADA improvements, things like that, we have some funding incentives for that as well. We have several Measure E public safety projects that are planned. So we've had a multi-year approach to upgrading our communications, specifically our radios. We're going to do some dual band radios and some of the infrastructure that is involved for both PD and the fire department. There are some new vehicles proposed, and I think the largest investment is the remodeling of the police station to help house our new employees, which we have hired, obviously, because of Measure E. There's a handful of employee safety investments, so PPE and other items for both departments that's also identified in the plan. And then obviously a significant amount of infrastructure investment. So I outlined some of the road work that we're looking at. We are putting together, Dave and Public Works Director Daniel Galvez are putting together a large community-wide street striping program. So in general, we usually do somewhere between about $20,000 and $30,000 a year. We're going to look at a much larger program the next year to try and tackle some more of that work and hopefully use the benefit of economies of scale by doing a larger project. Continue with our investments in parks and at the pool as well. So there's a handful of improvements at different locations. Obviously, one of them will be the Athwal Park bathrooms. That's being funded through our Prop 68 funding, and then we will start a lot of our significant work on the dog park, although we don't have a timeline yet as to when that construction work will take place. And then there's a large, one of the largest amounts for the funding of the fiber optic broadband installation that we're hopeful that will kick off towards the end of this this calendar year. So that's included as well. Number of water system improvements as well. So looking at any mainline replacement that needs to occur. We try and time those up with any road projects or any other things we have as well, so that we can, you know, when those things, that construction work is happening, we're taking advantage of all that happening at the same time. That's I know a quick summary, but kind of goes over some of the main highlights of the projects involved. But you have a full report there. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have or input on other projects or locations.
Any council discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. The annual public, or this annual street striping. That's paid by Measure C.
Yes.
It's 200. Okay. It just seems an awful lot for street striping.
Well, it is. That's the project where we're kind of, you know, usually we do about somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000, and we kind of tackle certain areas. But we're trying to put together a larger. A lot of those prices have gone up. A big portion of it is traffic control, and so when they can get a larger project, then we can hopefully bring some of those prices down. Also, the price of paint has gone up. So when you do smaller jobs like that, then the price tends to be a little bit higher. So we're going to. The goal is to get all of the schools redone in the summertime, try and get a lot of the bike lanes that we have. So, I mean, putting a lot of those bike lanes in is great, but you got to maintain them, you got to repaint them, and then just trying to hit some of those, you know, ongoing, you know, maintenance items.
A lot of that's crosswalk then for
Yeah.
schools. Okay.
Yeah, crosswalks. It's all that. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
This is information only, correct?
Yes, for this evening, yes. Ultimately, the council will consider the full adoption of the improvement plan as part of your budget consideration at the public hearing in June.
I have one I'd like to bring up. I had some requests for a shade cover at Heritage Park over the play structure. Over the last couple of years, I've had a lot of requests for that. I think I brought it up to Alex a week or two ago. Yeah, Heritage Park, yeah.
Okay.
Because they had some, I guess they were pine trees, you know, but they all died, so they tore them all down. And, you know, there's no trees very close to the play structure at all. And it really needs some shade.
Sure.
So I just want to bring that up. Thank you.
Any other council input? Okay, thank you. On to item 7.1, or 7, council reports and staff communications. 7.1, Community Services Commission, we have not met. 7.2, Public Safety Committee.
We have not met.
7.3, Chamber of Commerce.
I believe we meet next Tuesday.
7.4, Economic Development.
EDC has not met.
We have not met. 7.5, Finance Committee.
Have not met.
7.6, Planning Commission. We have not met. 7.7, SKGSA.
Nothing to report.
7.8, Downtown Business Improvement District.
Okay, so the Business Improvement District met on Monday, and having some conversations about website and photos and all the good stuff. Want to make sure that obviously we are showcasing our businesses and our beautiful downtown, but also the general parts of Kingsburg and what makes Kingsburg Kingsburg. And so there was some discussion around that, where they were obtaining those photos, were they, going to be grabbing them from opening up a application process again, but turns out they went forward with some that were given to them to stay under budget, so they don't have to continue to put money towards that. And that's it. They chatted about maybe needing a map for the trolley for Swedish Festival, but other than that, they're just trying to really get that branding down. And
Was there any more conversation about utilizing the sign that's on, I think it's Merritt, the electronic sign?
No. It had come up in the past,
Okay.
though, but not at this one. The one before. I didn't report that out last time, though. Yeah.
7.9, Council of Governments. Are you giving the report?
Councilmember Roman asked me to share a couple of items. The policy board approved the multi-jurisdictional housing element that I mentioned earlier, so that's the approval from the communities that will participate in, and then we got our official approval of our transient-oriented development grant of about $400,000 that will go towards sort of phase one of the improvements that were identified in the. So last time we got a grant, we put together a plan for downtown, and so some of those improvements include adding additional bike lanes or some additional intersection improvements for some other of the downtown locations that will help with the bump outs and things like that. So it will construct some of those. So once we have some more of that, we'll bring that back to you for further discussion, and once we put it out to bid, and you'll have to accept a contract at that point. So a couple of good items.
Thank you. 7.10, Council Member Reports. Nothing. 7.11, City Manager's Report.
As mentioned briefly during the first presentation, but the Linnea Villas grand opening has been rescheduled for the 25th of this month, so May 25th. Waiting on final details that we'll share at that time, but that's the plan for right now. And then the Measure E Oversight Committee is meeting next Tuesday at 4 p.m., so they will be looking at the Measure E budget, and that occurs next week. And then obviously Swedish Festival is in a couple of weeks, so it starts next, not 2 weeks from tonight, but 2 weeks from tomorrow. So.
Do we have a time on the 25th for Linnea?
I believe it's 10:30 in the morning is what they were anticipating, so I would imagine they'll have their event and then have some like a catered lunch or something there as well, but I'm still just waiting those final details, but I believe that's the time.
Okay. Item 8, future agenda items. We have none listed. So item 9, we will adjourn our regular Kingsburg City Council meeting.
Hey, Alex. What time is that? Grand opening on the 25th?
I think 10:30.
10:30?
Good morning, yes.
I'm not available